Hi.
It's good to be with you again. A devotee of Ramana Maharshi, who had been with him about 25 years, had a son that died, and he was grief-stricken. So he begged to have an audience with Ramana. Now Ramana rests from 12 to 2. He agreed to see his devotee. When the devotee entered the hall, Ramana was reclining on his couch with his eyes closed. And he started to cry and tell him all his troubles, how much he loved his son. And then he asked Ramana, what is God? Ramana didn't answer. He kept still for about 15 minutes. And then he opened his eyes and he said very softly, what is God? We'll talk about that tonight. What is God? It's like when someone asks the question, is the world real? The world by itself is an illusion. But God as the world is real. As we progress, we find that there never was a God, so there never was a world. But for the sake of talking, because God is the universe everything, from the lowliest microbe to the fullest galaxy, is God in expression. Everything is God. Every leaf, every piece of clay, every star, every planet has no basis for its existence by itself. Because God is, everything else is. That's what Ramana meant when he answered, what is God? He was trying to explain to the devotee, your son dying, that is God. Your son living, that is God. There's no real difference, only in your mind. We differentiate only in the mind. If the mind were made quiescent, quiet, there would be no differentiation between death and life. We make the differentiation because we think. It's a mental concept that someone dies and that's bad, but someone lives, that's good. There's no such differentiation. There is only God. And everything that exists, everything is God. There can be nothing apart from God. But then I say that God doesn't exist, except in your mind. That is the reason that in reality, no thing exists. Do you follow that? As long as you think, there will be existence. Person, place, and thing. But when you stop thinking, there's no room for existence. Because there cannot be the silence and existence. Everything that appears to be opposes the silence. The silence is consciousness, absolute reality, Satchitananda. The self exists as itself. Yet when you begin to modify it, you say, well, God exists. God is the first modification of consciousness. And it's God's job is to create the world. And then to dissolve the world. And then to create the world. Who gave God that job? Henry? Henry didn't do it. Who did? Why would God want to create worlds, universes, and then dissolve them? And after a period of time, bring them back into existence? Yet this is what we read about in all the scriptures. This information is for the Ayani. For the man steeped in ignorance. You have to explain to this man how the world became existent, or he will not be satisfied. You therefore go into all the modifications. There is the self, and the self is consciousness. Consciousness modifies itself, and you have God. God modifies itself, and you have existence. Ramana realized that if he explained this to the devotee wouldn't understand. If he told the devotee that only the self exists and your son didn't die because he was never born, it would be too much for the devotee to comprehend. Therefore, instead he said, God is. What is God. It made the devotee feel better, for he realized that his son was in God's hands, and all is well. But yet, if we have a questioning mind, we question, where did God come from? And why does God appear as all these things? What is its purpose? Most of us know there is no purpose. No thing exists the way it appears. Your real nature is pure awareness. Pure awareness is the universal. There is no place for anything else. In other words, you cannot have existence as it appears and pure awareness. Otherwise, you would have diversification. As the appearance shows you. There's a beautiful tree, there's a sky, there are flowers, there are animals, there are insects. If pure awareness or the self is self-contained, how can there be anything else? Where would the room come from? It's just like space. When you have a room filled with furniture, what happens to the space it takes up? And then you take the furniture out of the room. Has the space changed? Nothing has happened to the space. The space is the same whether the room is filled with furniture or not. And so it is with reality. Reality exists. The self exists as the self. But it appears as if there are things in the universe. As if there is a universe. There are people, there are animals, there are planets. There's the vegetable kingdom, the mineral kingdom. All this appears as real. You therefore have to ask the question, to whom does this appear? Who sees this? You know by now it's the eye. The eye is the culprit. If it weren't for the eye, there would be no universe. There would be no God. There would be no creation. So Ramana couldn't tell this to the devotee because the devotee wouldn't understand. He therefore said, what is God. The world appears to exist. The world by itself can never exist. So the next step is to say that God exists as the world. But I say to you, there is no God and there's no world. And nothing is as it appears. The appearance is called false imagination. And whose fault is it? The eye. Blame the eye. Whenever you make a mistake, say it's the eye's fault. Because there are no mistakes. It sounds funny because it's true. If you did not identify with I, nothing would exist. Things only exist because you identify with your I. Now the grand secret is to follow the I back to its source. If you really follow the I back to its source, there is no God. Where would God come from? Even as I talk about the word God, some of you are still thinking of a figure up in the sky. An anthropomorphic type of deity. Who created him? It's the same old question. If God created the universe, who created the God? There is no verbal answer. For it goes beyond thought. You will know the truth about this question when you quiet your mind. When the mind is no longer in existence, the answer will reveal itself. For you will be the answer. Otherwise, there's no answer. But I can assure you, there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as creation. And there's no such thing as a universe. So there's no such thing as the world. And there's no such thing as you. There's no such thing as I. What is left? Silence. I realize that many of you are bhaktas, taking away your enjoyment. I'm taking away your God that you worship, be it in the form of Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, Moses, whomever you like to worship. But I speak at many levels. As far as a yoni is concerned, it's virtually impossible for a God to exist separate from your soul. But yet, such people as Nisargadatta Maharaj, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, and many other yanis did bhakti. Ramana used to pray to Shiva in the form of Arunachala. Nisargadatta also prayed to Shiva. So the question is, why did I do that? And the answer is for the sake of others. To get to the stage where God does not exist for you any longer is a very high transcendental stage. I do not expect you bhaktas to give up your worship. As you know, on Sunday we have puja and we have chanting. To whom are we chanting? To Hari, to Ram, to Krishna. I must again tell you, as long as you believe you are the doer, that you are the body and the mind, do not fool yourself into thinking you're not. So if you weren't, you wouldn't react the way you react to situations. So as long as you believe that things are real, then you have to pray to God. Because God does exist for you. You can call God the law of karma. In reality, karma does not exist. Yet how many of us has touched reality? Therefore, the best thing for you to do is to practice the yana practices. Do not give it up. If you're doing japa, whatever practice you have, keep it up. But practice self-inquiry. And as you practice self-inquiry, you will notice something very interesting happening to you. You will notice that little by little, you begin to give up your worship. Slowly but surely. Until the day comes when you become the object of your worship. If you've been worshiping Krishna, you will see yourself as Krishna, and so forth. If you try to act like a yoni before your time, you will have a lot of problems. For you will develop, I don't give a damn attitude. And that's not what we're talking about. I'll give you an idea of how a yoni acts. There was once a yoni who lived in a little shack on a mountain by himself. He was radiantly happy. He was coming back from his walk, and he saw some thieves breaking into his house. He crept up by the window to see what they would take. And of course he owned nothing. There was just a torn blanket on the floor. So the thieves started to curse. And one said to the other, this guy has nothing here, let's just take the blanket and leave. So they took the blanket. The next day, he intuitively perceived that the two robbers were caught by the police. So he hurried down to the police station to see what would happen. And when the sergeant saw him, he said, come in. Are these the men who stole from you? And he said, yes. So the policeman asked him, what did they take? And he said, they took my hat and my shirt and my pants and my shoes. And the two thieves started screaming, what a liar this man is. He didn't have anything, he just had a torn blanket. And the sergeant said, is this true? The yoni said, when I put the blanket on my head, it becomes my hat. When I put it around my shoulders, it becomes my shirt. When I tie it around my waist, it becomes my pants. And when I walk in it, it becomes my shoes. Of course, the sergeant laughed and he said, should I press the charges? And the yoni said, no. The two thieves became his disciples. The meaning of that story is, because you're a yoni, it doesn't mean you have compassion. A real yoni has more love and compassion than anyone else. But is not attached to anything. And will be the first one to run to somebody's aid, to help somebody. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. So while the yoni carries the body becomes under the yoni's jurisdiction and becomes an instrument for good in this world. Therefore, you can never judge a yoni, for you have no idea what a yoni is or what he is. You can see a yoni praying to God just as ardently as a bhakta. Yet the yoni knows there is no God, but does it for the sake of others. So when I tell you there is no God, and there is no universe, and there is no world, and there are no people, there's only absolute reality. Do not take it too seriously. See where you're coming from. Be true to yourself. Do not fool yourself. Whatever you're into, whatever you're going through, if you sit in the silence and practice self-inquiry, things will begin to stir within you. Things will begin to happen. You will find that your feelings change. Your reaction changes. You become less selfish. You develop loving kindness. You understand what this universe is all about. And you are at peace.